Right. Okay, so this is kind of a sidetrack from obviously what we talked during the eco-literacy course. But since it seems that a few of you were really keen to understand, or maybe they are getting into planning events sustainably, I felt it was a nice little thing, and it's also good for me to understand where you're at. So, what I've put on for today is just a little bit of understanding how events and sustainability are linked together, and what does that mean for events into the triple bottom line lens again. And then I will share with you the how a green event is designed in 4 steps, and that's something that if you look at sustainable event planning literacy, you will find it more or less the same steps. We all call it differently, but this is what I am using at least. And I've kind of reiterated in the last 7 years. So it would be a good starting point if you haven't gotten yourself into any of this. And then we're looking at some ideas on how we balance sustainability and attendee experience. And then we're looking at low cost alternatives and realistic swaps in between the ideal case scenario and the realistic case scenario. And then I put together a little formula for what's truly better. Hopefully, Monique, that is what you were looking for, but let's see. And a little bit of the common pitfalls that I see. And I have banged my head against the wall many times when I started. And I'm planning to give you at least 15-20 minutes for Q&A at the end. So that's the plan for today. So, starting from the very beginning, I just want to put the events into the lens of the triple bottom line and what it means for events to be planned sustainably. I think by default, events are not sustainable. We're moving people, we're creating waste, we're creating unnecessary food. So, I think if you look at what it means to plan an event sustainably, I just want you not to focus only onto the environmental impact that the event makes, but also on the social element and the prosperity element that an event effectively can bring to the hosting community, because you are now putting people together and you're creating a platform that can also be used for promoting other things, right? So we can promote other topics aside of our own event, or simply just be there to walk the walk, and then by a default showing that things can be done differently. So while of course we want to minimize our ecological footprint, we also want to use the event itself as an opportunity to influence others, to show them that things can be done differently, but also using our own investment to support the hosting community, or maybe to collaborate with other organizations and businesses that they also are working towards a better planet. So just think a little bit more holistically than just how do I cut waste. So that's where I wanted to go with. And then we can just go straight into how do we create a map for designing a sustainable event. I've split this in 4 ways, and this again, it's something that I have digested on my own after I've done my own training, but you'll find that it's more or less the same across different ways of planning sustainable events. The first one is to kind of align your initiatives with either your company or your clients' already ongoing initiative towards the sustainable development goals. And that does a lot to begin with, because first of all, you are not a satellite experience. You're actually aligning and contributing to the overall plan of a company to be better at something. So if they are, for example, looking at cutting food waste, or perhaps having like a thriving society, then you already know that you can help them with that event to kind of show how they can make more of that impact across different areas. So it can, you will then serve them as an extend of their overall achievement for sustainability. So you are now basically giving them an extra point to achieve their goals. And so that's the very first step. And it's not only that, but it also helps you to get the buy-in from your boss, your client, or whoever it is, because you are just basically not asking to do anything differently. You are just basically telling them, I know you're already doing this, for example, so I'm going to align to what you already do internally. So it's kind of a natural sequence in what they do, which it will allow and help smooth those conversations around making changes or simply adopting more sustainable practices. And then what it also does is it helps you go into the step number two. So this is kind of your step number one, which is aligning your event sustainability with the company goals. And what this translates into, once you know what goals we're looking at, it translates into where do we put our focus. So throughout the years, I've kind of segmented my sustainability focus into 9 key areas or critical areas, through which I will then create a plan of action. So let's go, for example, to the no hunger sustainability goal. And then it's very simply to connect to the food and beverage of an event, right? And what does that mean? So it's very easy once you know which goals you're looking at to go, okay, well, if I want to help my client to continue with like lowering their food waste, then I can use the food and beverage segment to bring forward my sustainable event planning. And what does this do? It kind of helps you crystallizing and making it very practical what you want to do and where and how. So imagine we now know that we want to help this company continuing saving meals. And then we look into the food and beverage. And now, while we're in this segment, what can we do? And here is what I would say: write it down, like physically write down what's your objective. So, your objective is our goal is no hunger. Our objective is to look into the F&B of the event, and we want to make sure that we have zero food waste. How do I go zero food waste? And then you really write down how are you going to achieve your zero food waste, which it could be I will be switching from buffet to plated meals. I would only I would only cater for the exact number of meals. I will have a waste recovery plan in place, which it could be partnering with a community that comes and collect the leftover meals. It could be partnering with a farm that comes and collect the leftover meals. It could be partnering with the venue that can then repurpose the foods that can be repurposed to allow you to have the least amount number of food waste. So imagine how much you're already doing in one little area and then translate that in any other area. For example, if community is important to your client and they are trying to have a thriving community at work, or they're trying to have accessibility or a little bit more of a diverse community, then what can we do in that aspect? Can we collaborate with minority groups to come in perhaps to performances or help us with decoration that kind of instigate that conversation on where is it coming from and what does it mean? And then it's kind of helping you creating that little plan of action. I hope that makes sense so far. All right. So one thing I say here is start very small, because you heard me talking about 1 and 2 points, and I've already gave you so many different things you can do. So start very small, because you need to be very accountable to whatever you do. So don't think you have to touch all of the 9 areas. I wouldn't do that. That's kind of suicidal at first. Just go 1 or 2 key points. It's plenty, but just do one and do it super duper well. Like do a few things in one point, because what it does, it helps you stay focused on where you're putting your impact, your efforts, your resources, and then helps you also bring in the case for sustainability forward in the next edition. And then you can add on. So once you've got your areas, your plans, and your objectives, it's time to talk about them. Here, what I'd say is you want to kind of think about who is involved and when, and then just talk to them to make sure that they are compliant and informed. The very first stop, obviously, is your boss or your client, depending on which setting you're working at. If you are, obviously, if it's your own event, you do what you please, then you just tell others to suck it up if they care for you. But let's say you're in a business plan, in a business environment, and so you need to uh, communicate your sustainability efforts for your event to your clients or your boss, that needs to start right at the beginning, right? Just to make sure that they are okay with it, they're aligned, they are comfortable with you doing that. But once you have that, who else is involved into this picture? So think about anyone that is sponsoring you, because effectively, if you tell them that you are taking step forward to make your event more eco-friendly, they might be even willing to help you further. It has happened to me that a sponsor gave me more money because I told them that I was looking for alternative solutions for gift donations, and they just kind of literally handed me an extra $1,000 just because I said this is what I'm trying to do. And it also kind of reflects on them. So if you're doing something and it reflects on them, they should have the right to know what that is. Similarly, you want to work with partners and vendors that help you and don't come against you. So if you are, let's go back on our F&B example. If we are planning to do meals that they are plated and you work with the same caterer that for 10 years has done buffet for you, don't just say we're doing plated meals this year, because he will look at you and go like, what's gone into you? Just think about, what can I tell him to help me? And you could say, look, we want to save waste, so we don't want to do buffet anymore. We want to switch to plated food. And what can you do to make the switch better? Because it's his job. It might have way better ideas than you might have come up with because he might have even done it before. So the more you involve your partners and vendors, the easier it becomes for you to achieve what you have set yourself to achieve. If you don't talk to them, they won't know, they can't do what they will not know, right? Very simply. So make sure that once you have your objectives and what you're going to do, you inform the right vendors, right? So that they can also help you within your vision. Lastly, we have attendees. At the end of the day, we are making up this event for them. And I find that informing them earlier on and throughout the process, it doesn't just help them understanding the changes or having a different expectation of what the event will look like. But again, we are now informing people and we are kind of becoming the leaders on showing them how things can be done differently. So we again using our event as a guide for something more than just hosting an event. And at the same time, I found that once I've started explaining my attendees what I was doing to make the event a little bit more eco-friendly and made them accountable, I had a higher attendance rate. Because at that point, I am not just telling them, are you coming or not? I'm telling them, please let me know if you come because I am trying to avoid food waste. So if you tell me you're not coming, you are effectively already helping me achieving my goal. And that's kind of sense of accountability that a person feels more close to instead of going, if I don't want to go, I won't go, who cares? So there's a lot of different effects that comes into communicating at different level. Of course, you know what to say to whom and when, but it's just try to reflect on this is not the normal way of planning. Therefore, it needs to be addressed in order to be able to succeed at it at the different angles. So, what does effectively having a sustainable event plan look like? I think there's a lot of different things that you might have done or seen around, and I think that the smaller items actually are the one that have the most impact Here you'll see some screenshots I took from my own events. So as you can see, it's nothing fancy. Like this is just done with the least amount of budget, with the least amount of effort. For example, if you look at the spinning machines, the juice spin, the one at the bottom, those machines actually, if you look closely, you can see there's blenders on them. So we had a event that it was all about the energy transition. And because I had absolute zero budget to do this, I have decided to make a point of only using natural daylight and only the energy that I had there and then, which it meant we didn't have any electricity in the room. Like I just switched the lights off. That was it. We kept the windows open because it was spring. And I basically made the point of telling them this is what your life will look like if you didn't have electricity. And imagine all of those people that actually don't have electricity. And then it was such a strong point that we made. Obviously, the client was very like open to that. And that's where you have to meet your client or boss where they are comfortable, but they were all in. And so when it came to catering, for example, how this juice machine came by is that we basically created a make your own lunch space where people had access to raw foods and pre-cooked foods, and they were just there and they have to make their own lunch. They had water, and they also had fresh fruits. If they wanted something else than water, they sat on the bike and they pedal off their own juice. And then it becomes a statement piece, it becomes an entertainment thing, and it becomes something very memorable. And honestly, it didn't cost us much. And that's such an impactful idea to show how things can be done differently. And it shows the message of think what other people are going through when they don't have electricity. So it's, just moving that way. Even the one with the flowers. So if you look up to this, like right up, you'll see there's flowers there, for example. Those flowers, they became a $3,000 charity donation. Basically, the venue itself didn't want any waste whatsoever. So we scaled down on the decoration in the room. And then what I decided to do is I was already partnering with a hospital for this charity event. And what the charity event was about donating, selling flowers that people get in the hospital that, they leave behind. And so I spoke to this company with the British Chamber of Commerce, and I said to them, look, can we take your flowers and donate them to this hospital because they're having a charitable event to sell flowers? So effectively, the chamber took what it was going to send to the trash and transformed them in a donation that made the hospital $3,000. Again, zero waste, zero cost, great impact. So this is how a sustainable event should look like. Is those small little actions that they don't cost a fortune. They just take a little bit of creativity and a little bit of mindset shift, which we should all know have. We should surely have now, given the last few weeks. And just be creative and be fun and be open. So I hope these are a few ideas that, it starts making you understand how you can include sustainability activities or small items like ticket items to embed and create a little bit more of a holistic event. But let's look at more of these. So
Serena,
I think if you,
I just wanted to say I really, sorry, I just wanted to say I really love the creativity that you've exhibited here and the fact that you start with the strategic goals in mind and the point that you want to communicate at the start, and from there built out a very creative campaign to achieve those goals.
yeah,
I just wanted to
yeah.
say I
Oh, thank
appreciate it.
you. Oh, thank you. I think it's, this has come from trying and trying and trying. So don't think that it will come to you right away. And it's also like a process that you go through as you need to move on, but it needs some structure. And that's what I wanted. That's why I start from the very beginning. It's not just about the individual action, but it's about what it means and what it comes from and what it needs to achieve. And then creativity will flow, because I guess we all here are fairly creative people. And so once you have the little bit of structure, then you can really play and have fun with it. So I've put some more over here about, low cost. So if you can't do one, do the other of the activities. And this kind of, we can reiterate some of the concept. But for example, another thing that I am very much against is swags and branded giveaways. I absolutely hate those. I think it's just an absolute amount of waste and money wasted. And then one of the things I've always found interesting to do is to actually collaborate, especially if you have no budget for them, instead of falling back onto low quality items or cheap items or unethically sourced or produced items. Is can you collaborate maybe with one, two, three eco-friendly brands that they would love the opportunity to showcase their products, and then it's kind of a trade giveaway. And even if sometimes I've got cases where we didn't have enough for everybody to have the same item, but because we communicated that we were trying to be as eco-friendly as possible, we also communicated that the items that they were given, they were effectively part of a collaboration that we took on ourselves to help other companies to bring their service and products forward. And so it just became again part of that narrative to say this event, it goes beyond today and it sets an example. And so even just doing that, it helps a lot. You're now giving a platform to other companies to also have an opportunity to thrive. Or something else that I also love to do, that it's also mentioned in the next slide, but once I'm at this subject, I'll take it now, is use a donation instead. So instead of doing a fixed item, you can also do donation on behalf of a company or on behalf of a person. And that you are in control of how much you can donate. You are in control of what you are donating to. And honestly, I find that people that attend events are probably in an economical situation where they don't need an extra item. And so donating that money on their behalf, it means they are the one, still benefiting because they are doing it and they are having that feeling of like, oh, I would have rather not getting an extra swag, but I love the idea of perhaps I've sent a child to school for a week, right? So, and those are the trades off. And there is also a way of communicating this during the event itself that it's very impactful. So you could just, create a video or a thank you slide, or just send them an email, like a funky email with a little wrap bow and say, this is what you've donated to. So just to remind them that it's not that we just didn't give them anything. And if you don't say it, if you don't show it, that's what they will think. And especially if you have events that you've done over and over and over, where there is a set expectation to receive something, of course you should have communicated these changes, but this is also part of those changes communicated. To say this year, instead of making you walk home with another plastic bottle or like another umbrella, we decided to donate on your behalf, and this is what you're donating to. So as long as those things are talked through, I always found people being very happy with this solution. And then you as an organizer, or you as a company that has only a certain amount of money, can very easily play with how much they can donate, right? So it's kind of a win-win situation here. And you have less stress about printing, less stress about delivery. You don't have the carbon emission cost on top. Like there's so many more benefits into trying to trade giveaways with donation. So that's one another swap you can make. I think something else that maybe it's not super intuitive is if you are working in a company where there are a lot of events, for example, switching to a minimalistic but high impact design and a modular design where you might have a big statement piece And then you could perhaps add on depending on the events so that your cost it's justified by having one piece, and then over the time you can keep using that and adding other elements to kind of keep it fresh that you can still keep and use. Like you can kind of swap them around event from event, but it allows you not to trash that much at the end of each event. It also helps with carbon emission. Again, we're not shipping stuff all the time, and it keeps the cost down because effectively you're using things over time. So you also keep your costs down. So that's something else. And even on entertainment, that's maybe an area that people don't associate with sustainable event planning. But again, we are looking at the triple bottom line, and people, it's part of them. And so instead of paying for an entertainment, instead of paying for somebody to exhibit, can we perhaps look at working and if we can pay them, great. But if we can't, maybe we can simply collaborate with those association that they are working on cultural knowledge, or even just like sports association that help diversely able people, just to give them a space to say, hey, we exist, we are still human, we still do great stuff, and we're here to show you in a more engaging way. And it also helped these people to feel like more dignified and seen and heard. So again, this is the knockdown effect of looking at an event not just from a saving waste perspective, but through a triple bottom line lens again. That's where we're going at. And then lastly, what I have here, well, not lastly, I have a couple of more to go. This is kind of your ideal case scenario, which is what we always see portrayed in the media. These massive, huge companies that they have pitch perfect event sustainability reports, and what the reality looks like. Those things are very different. And I feel like when you are starting, or when you're just challenged to do it on your own and see how it goes, I just don't want you to think that because you don't have like a fully fledged sustainability army of people, you can't make a difference. I think there's so many swaps that you can make slowly but surely that it gives you, at least it helps you set the case to ask for more next time. So remember that event number one, it will never be perfect. I'm not even gonna lie. It's gonna be a lot of messy things that you forgot, or they haven't gone done properly, or just simply didn't pan out as you thought, and that's perfectly fine. But you want a base. So I just put here some examples, like if you cannot have an eco-certified catering supplier because it's too expensive, or maybe you simply don't have one right next to you, can you then just use local vendors, use seasonal ingredients, talk to the chef in your hotel and tell him, what do you have locally this week, and start from there? Can you do that instead? Because it kind of does the same. It's just that it doesn't have the fancy label on it. And then I think something else is even the carbon offsetting program. It's like it is expensive and it is incredibly complex to offset the carbon of an event because there are so many different parts to be accounting for that it is incredibly overwhelming, especially if you have a very lean team, especially if you've never done something like this before. And what I'm going is, instead of offsetting everything, can you maybe focus on one area? Let's look at transportation. Can you simply ask your guests when they come in at registration, where did you come from? How did you travel here? And start understanding what's your environmental impact of people traveling to your event. And then just build on that for next year, or like get that as a starting point for your next event, for example. And so there's always a trade-off. And even like the full sustainability reports, that's the one that I always see and I'm like, oh, they look so pretty and they look so perfect. But I have been at the other side trying to put those numbers together, and it is so hard. And sometimes because we want to do too much, and that's why before I said start very small because less is more, just track everything you do. And that will also take us to the next slide, but like just track everything you do and just even if things haven't gone as you wanted them to go, maybe it's a good point to write it down because it will remind you next time you go there and go like, okay, I went there last time, it didn't work, and this is why it didn't work. So it doesn't have to be a fully professional report. Just be transparent about how you calculate it. And so if it's not a professionally made report, you still can share it, but share it with humility and share it more as in this is what we noted down rather than look at our sustainability event report, right? So we don't want to go into the greenwashing territory, but we also need to be realistic with what we have. So that's more or less it. But I think this is a question that made me smile a lot. Like, what's truly better? And I was like, oh, I wish I had that specific answer. But I think having done probably the mark of nearly 50 events in a more like looking at sustainability first, there is no one fits all. But usually I say that the better swaps are if you can make your event with what you have, you can measure what you're doing, you consider the whole process from start to end of the waste, you look at how many people you can benefit with, and you can make it again and again, then you win. So that's my what's truly better. Like use what available. It sounds kind of intuitive, but I'm gonna say something very controversial. If you have a whole ton of disposable cups, don't go your way to buy better until you finish those disposable cups. Because what you're doing effectively, you are doubling up the amount of waste. Because if you don't use those, you are just, you are kind of shifting the issue. And so sometimes you want to kind of get back to zero before you can move forward. And that doesn't mean that you don't account for the, like disposable cutlery. It means that you make yourself responsible to dispose it correctly. And you make yourself accountable for how much do you truly need versus how much you would want to give out. And so just use what you have and be very responsible and think about the entire process. So this is the low waste part of it because the process matters just as much as the outcome. If you want to switch from disposable to reusable, and you're now having to go and buy a whole lot of new sets of plates and cutlery, or maybe you're just using other alternatives that you will still have to dispose, you're still buying them, you're still transporting them, and you still have all of those plastic cups and cutlery sitting on your floor office. So how is that better as an ultimate outcome? Can we not do something around how we use them and how we dispose them consciously instead? So just think about the overall plan. I know it can sound, it's a bit controversial, but sometimes we also need to take the wider picture in consideration. And again, measurable, record everything you do, the good and the bad, especially the bad, because that's where you will learn the most. It's by having that written down. Where do you start? What do you want to achieve? What are you going to do for it? What did you actually do for it? And if there is a gap in between, where was that gap? And it doesn't have to be a very complex report. Usually I do this on Excel. I just write myself notes. And then maybe I make them prettier and I showcase to my clients. But to me, it's more about having that piece to go back to and see where we won and see where we failed so that we can reiterate and we can make it repeatable for next time. Because that's all it counts. It's how do we keep going forward and better instead of doing it once, burning yourself to the ground and never do it again because that was a terrible experience. So that's kind of how what's truly better looking like. That's my best explanation for that. Lastly, I have just a few mistakes that I have done myself, and I wish nobody else will ever do them again. So if I can spare you some headaches, I would be very happy to. So again, don't take too much on board at once. If you've done it all and if you've done it great, then it means you can do twice as much next time. but I would rather you do it all and do it great than start and then not finish it. That's my first point. Have a written plan because adding sustainability to an event planning, it's not mainstream and it can be easily forgotten. And also, if you don't write it down, you might leave gaps in between who is doing it and when and where and how. Imagine you've accounted for a van to come and collect your leftover meals, and your chef has packed the meals, but nobody has told the chef to call the van person, or you don't have a van person, a person calling the van to come and collect them. The meals are wasted again. So just like trying to write it down and make it part of your ongoing planning stage. So just kind of carried it over. And if you are serious about getting a sustainability report or start tracking your carbon footprint, before you start anything, start tracking and talk to your provider to understand what they want you to track exactly and where, because most likely they will have different platforms. So it's very easy for you to start tracking things and then deciding to go into a carbon offsetting company and say, oh, can you help me offsetting my carbon footprint for my event? And then they just go like, yeah, but now I need you to retrack everything, which is nearly impossible at that point. So if you are serious into getting into that stage, try to do it as early as possible and have very clear from them and with your team, how are you going to measure it and where? Because otherwise it would be very, very hard and expensive practice for you to offset, because then you're just going to offset for a default margin, and that's going to be quite expensive trick to do. Lastly, communicate everything and to everybody. Don't forget, don't think because you are doing it, everyone gets it. They don't. If they don't know, they can't help you. So that's what I had. So it's time for me to be quiet and let you guys ask questions.
I really, again, I really enjoyed the linkage with the strategy at the start and being conscious and clear on what you're trying to achieve, and also making sure that the process is sustainable, as you said, that you don't overextend yourself and burn yourself out and never want to do it again. So it's almost making this as the process sustainable. What kind of what out of all of these, what has the biggest impact? I know there are different dimensions, but are there any standard big wins that we can make? Or is it really on an individual?
I think it depends where you want to look at. I think you can look at ecological wins if you are really looking at just cutting waste. And then you can also look at the like people aspect of the wins. And again, as I was saying before, I saw wins from an economical standpoint of partnership, increasing their engagement and just give us more money. I have seen a higher attendance rate. I have seen people being more engaged throughout the event and just remembering post event. So those are some of the wins that, to me, for somebody that is trying to impress and somebody that is trying to do something extra, they might look at it and go, oh, okay, so you just want to think of what your clients would call a win. But these are the things that I've seen coming up more often, at least.
I think I've just missed the entire point, which is really by communicating it, you have a greater impact beyond the event as well in terms of consciousness around sustainable events. So I've just joined the dot in my own brain there.
That's all right.
Answered my own question.
That's why we're here. Yeah. I think, yeah, it's if you are talking to a client and obviously has sustainability embedded within their practices already, I think usually where I come with this is not like, oh, can I do this? It's more like, you're doing this, right? So if we're doing this event, maybe we should look at this and this and this so that we can help you achieving that goal faster. Like it's really like, it's such a direct connection at that point. That it's not you asking for permission, it's not you disrupting, it's you simply facilitating what they're already doing.
Love that.
Serena, sorry, I was a bit late to the call. Apologies. I had child duty. Can I just kind of cement that what you're saying is transparency is really more important than being perfect and getting everything right. And if you can just be really open and honest about your processes, then that's really key.
Yes, I think, but you need to think about transparency in two ways. One is transparency with your client, because obviously you can't omit anything because then you are the one greenwashing effectively. But then you kind of have to have a discussion with them about transparency on the outward, right? So like how much are they comfortable with sharing? And that's more coming on to you in your communication style, or of course we don't want to do selective disclosure because that's we're going back to greenwashing. We just saw that not few many days ago. But it's just about transparency both internally and externally. And sometimes to me I'm like, well, if you're not ready to do it really well, just don't do it, just put it there for next time. Or maybe we can do it, but we don't communicate that externally. We can communicate that internally, and then we can do our own track record. And then as long as what you say externally to the public and also to the employees, right? Because this goes both ways. If it's an internal event, you still can greenwash your own employees, right? And so the transparency, it goes from you to your client to the attendees effectively, and then even onto the wider public. So that's the kind of double conversation you need to have with them and see what's the comfort level. Because in my experience, some companies are incredibly forward thinking, and some others, they will just not want to say anything at all. At the case of literally like just not doing it because if it cannot be done perfectly and communicated perfectly, then they don't want to do it. And then it's just up to you how much you can test that boundary.
And I think if it's something new that you're testing, that maybe they don't want to be completely open about it all in the first instance. That might be kind of a second year thing. So to
Exactly.
almost like test the water and have a bit of a benchmark and see how it goes, and then be fully transparent the following year, maybe.
Precisely. I think it's also why I like to really have a little bit of a track record of what we're doing, because even if it goes absolutely dreadfully bad, it's something that you can also share internally with, your closest side of clients and go, hey, I know we tried and this is how bad it went. And this is just between you and I. So, but just the fact of having it put in black and white, it kind of helps them and you obviously reflect on where you wanted to go and where you went and that gap and why that gap was there, which it could also help them making way more shift than just for events. Because then practically, if you're talking to a company that does many different things for sustainability and then they keep failing at the same thing, you're just now bringing them another evidence that they're failing at the same thing. And so they kind
Mm.
of push that back into, oh, maybe we should make a change, not just into our events, but like further into our way of conducting business at heart. So it's kind of that little tracking. And then at least for me, my very first few events, those pieces of notes, they were so good because then whenever I proposed that to other clients, I already knew the shortcoming I had. Of course, each situation is different because events are different. You have, different audience, different places, different everything. But sometimes it's also good to see, okay, that went really horribly bad. So if I'm going in that direction, I know I need to watch out for these things that I couldn't see last time. And so it kind of becomes your own little Bible on how you can do it. And then you can also be transparent with your client and say, hey, I've tried that before. That's how it went. If you want to do, you can of course try and do it differently, but that could be an outcome.
Thank you.
I
And did you sorry to ask one quick question. Did you have a kind of a template that you started off with when you kind of did your first event in this way? Is there something that you worked from, or is it something that you kind of developed as you went?
I've developed. So what you see here, I don't know if you can see the screen, but
Yeah.
what you can see here, it's basically what I started developing for myself that I thought it made more sense for me and it made more sense for the people I worked with. And it helped me kind of crystallizing those thoughts because I remember the very first time I did an event that I thought I was going to be more eco-friendly. I just thought I was going to save food. That was so naive of me because I just didn't understand the extent of the work I had to do at the back end. And then as a result, I think we saved like 10 meals and we had 55 to save. And I was like, yeah, okay, that's really poor planning for me. And so I started kind of putting all these things down. I mean, some of these you will find in a lot of different literature that you look around for sustainable event planning. Some of these concepts, we kind of all crystallize it the same way because also when I've done my training, which it was back in 2017, there wasn't that much training on sustainable event planning. So I guess whoever has done it the same time as me might have similar way of approaching it. But then we all kind of freestyled it, right? Because it depends on what type of events you plan, how much time in advance, what kind of clients you have, what's your way of working. So this is kind of came to me slowly, slowly, and then I'm using it as a template.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Right.
On another note, I've just got my hands on a very interesting report on the use of language. It's a survey done in the US by a company, and I can share it chat in our chat group. And it looks at the language around climate change and how that divides people, and then looks at language that brings people together. And also it's done by a friend of mine who also does political polling and things around language. So it's super interesting because it does relate to a lot of the language we use around sustainability and people's reaction to specific phrases. So I can share that if I can work out how to upload it into our
Yeah, on Slack, you
on
can
Slack.
upload it, or you can just throw
Perfect.
it at me and I can post it on your behalf. Yeah,
Okay.
I think there's a lot to do around the just topic of influencing by communication. And events effectively are like the best place because you've got so many people under one roof. It's so nice. You just have them all there at your mercy, basically. And you can use that communication or even just those sentences. I think we did something similar. We did a wishing well wall for one event that where every attendee had to write a sentence to the next attendee coming in, and it was just basically all onto this white wall, and we basically just very simple, just again going back into you don't have to have any fancy stuff, but we had three massive whiteboards that we found in a hotel, and we just did grids on the boards, and then people would write their own little message on one of the board on one of the grids. And then a lot of the messages were about compassion, about giving a positive message to a person that was suffering. And this was straight after COVID. So there were a lot, a lot of people that have lost family members and, have like been out of society and really struggled with solitude and stuff like that. And we did something probably similar. So that's one thing, or even a pledge wall. Another event we used the tree to do a pledge wall. So each leaf we had like smaller little notes, and then they could just pick them, and just tie them onto the tree themselves. And then you could just go and see whatever else, like what people pledged on, basically. And that was also really impactful because it was super colorful by the end of it. It was like a naked tree, and then people pledging kind of regenerated the tree in a way. So it was like a double meaning as well. So these kind of things would really go a long way. If you have a little bit of creative mind in you, you can use them in so many different ways. Do you guys have any more questions for today? Anything else that you'd wanted to see?
No, it's been super helpful. Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Serena. I'm apologies for missing the beginning. Is this recorded or are you,
Yeah,
can
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
share?
I
Yeah,
have it
fabulous. Thank you.
recorded.
Amazing.
So
Thank you.
yeah, I can see the recording button still going on, so I will just send it over and I'll add the slides as well. I will put it into the general chat because this doesn't really belong to any part of the course, so I'll just pop it into the general. But I will give you guys the recording and the slides if they can be helpful. And then if you want anything in specific, you can always reach out. I'm happy to reshare whatever in a different form.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful.
No
Thank
worries. I
you.
hope it gives you some ideas on how to do it, and let me know if you do, because I'll be very curious to hear other successful stories, and maybe I steal some of your ideas. Who knows?
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Serena. It was
Okay.
really,
Thank
really
you.
helpful. I really appreciate it.
Most welcome. You guys have a good evening.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
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 Bye.